Today's episode is brought to you by Cobia. Designed by anglers, Cobia boats are the perfect balance of fishing smarts and comfort. It's not just best-in-class quality and performance, they have superior hull design, intelligent deck layouts, and more user-friendly helms. Cobia boats are family-friendly while maintaining that tournament-grade fishing performance. Check out their full lineup of center and dual consoles at CobiaBoats.com and give them a follow on social at Cobia Boats. Choose Cobia and have it all. I'm Jimmy Fee. I'm here with Robbie Tartaglia and Kevin Blinkoff for another episode of the On the Water podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about the International Convention of Allied Sport Fishing Trades, mostly known as ICAST, and that is a big convention that happens every year down in Orlando, Florida, where tackle manufacturers from all around the world get together, show off their new stuff, and you have fishing media and
fishing retailers.
Everybody kind of converges on this, and Kevin and I have done it for the past 14 years. I think my first one was 2009, and it was Robbie here's first ICAST ever. So we're going to get kind of the perspective of
old and jaded is what I'll provide,
and kind of Robbie's like first look at ICAST. But first, I'm going to let Kevin introduce Robbie. He's kind of a new addition to the On the Water staff.
Yeah, we got a new hire here, Robbie Tartaglia, who started with us as an intern last summer, graduated school, and now he's back here working for us full time. Produces some awesome video, awesome media. He's a captain as well now and a hell of a fisherman. Fishes a lot of Buzzards Bay in Massachusetts with his dad aboard their WorldCat, the tag team.
Yes, sir.
And Robbie, what's your Instagram handle so people can follow you?
My handle is at 508 Bass on Instagram, and you can get that on YouTube too. But for now, just kind of pushing it on Instagram and having a lot of fun with that. So.
And Robbie also does a lot of freshwater fishing, actually has done some guiding on Cape Cod ponds. So if you have any questions about freshwater bass fishing in the Northeast, especially on the Cape, Robbie's your man for that as well.
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun here. Grew up fishing a lot of tournaments and exploring all the kettle ponds and everything the Cape has to offer on the freshwater side of things. So really cool fishery. And
we asked you once, I don't know if it was in your interview or a conversation afterwards, we asked you, what do you like about what's special about fishing in the Northeast? And you had a great answer. So I'm going to ask you that question right now. What is it about the fishing in the Northeast that you love so much?
The variety of it all. It never really ends. You know, it's the exploration of it and the excitement of not knowing what you're going to hook on any given cast, whether in salt or freshwater on the Cape. So really the exploration side of it is my favorite part. You know, there's just so much to explore, and growing up just a kid from Southeast Mass with a ridiculous passion for fishing, exploring, and capturing moments on camera, it was always about looking on Google Maps, looking on Google Earth, and finding those next ponds and kind of creating my own intel and my own ways around the Cape and the surrounding areas. So it's kind of my favorite part about it for sure.
Definitely. And you do it all like a lot of people here on the water and a lot of our readers, everything from going offshore and tuna fishing, which you and Jimmy did this past weekend, to, like we said, the freshwater fishing, fly fishing, spin, everything. And that's sort of the attitude that we bring when we go down to ICAST. We come down there with that Northeast, East Coast perspective. We think about all the fish that we like to catch and all the ways we like to do it. And we think about our readers and the fish that they like to pursue and how they like to do it. And that's how we look at what products are down at ICAST and what is of interest to our readers. What do we want to bring back and talk about? So all that said, Jimmy, why don't you kick us off and start talking about ICAST?
So ICAST is put on by the American Sport Fishing Association. And I know On the Water, a bunch of our staff here are members of that. Kevin, what does the ASA do?
So the ASA represents the sport fishing industry. So a lot of different manufacturing industries will have a group like this, and they represent our interests, whether we're fishing media or if you're, say, a tackle company, one of your Shimano, Penn, lure makers. If you're a retailer, if you own a tackle shop and sell, many different groups that are represented by the American Sport Fishing Association. They have an office down near Washington, D.C. They spend a lot of time on Capitol Hill going and making sure that government policy is favorable to sport fishing, making sure that sport fishing remains a major national pastime. And then the other side of it that's very cool is because conservation is so important to keeping our sport alive and keeping the fishing industry healthy, keeping all these businesses doing business, selling reels, they promote conservation, and that is in freshwater, saltwater, very focused on habitat, on preventing overfishing, and making sure that recreational fishermen are well represented in the way that fish are managed.
So that's the ASA. ICAST is not quite a week-long event. It starts on a Tuesday and runs through Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The Tuesday event, the kind of the unofficial start to ICAST, is what they call ICAST on the Water. It doesn't have anything to do with us other than our being there, but that is where they have the manufacturers outside at the edge of a pond in this Orange County Convention Center, where you have a chance to actually cast the lures, pedal the kayaks or paddle the kayaks that are there, test out the new rods and reels, and kind of get acclimated to the Orlando humidity and heat. Then the next 3 days take place inside on the show floor, and it is if you've ever been to a winter sportsman show, take that and multiply it by about 3. Like, that's the size of ICAST. It is an enormous event, and there are booths, major manufacturers like Sims or Shimano or Pure Fishing, which owns Penn, Fenwick. They will have booths the size of pretty much like the size of our office, where they some like Costa Del Mar have a 2-tiered. They've got a 2-story booth, kind of like a tree house they build. So it's really a cool event to see all these companies go and kind of roll out the red carpet. To roll out the red carpet is really dumb.
It's kind of a red carpet, but actually in the convention center, it's more of like a multi-pattern, like sad hotel carpet. But that first day arriving at ICAST, I could see it. For me, it was getting there and getting the convention center, showing up. You have to get registered, get your badges and all that. And I'm like, okay, this is just part of the process. And I remember looking over though at Robbie, and he's just like wide-eyed. This is unbelievable, because people are walking by to also register, and there's people that Robbie recognizes, and he knows who they are. And then all of a sudden, I see him just kind of losing his mind. And there was basically two old guys walking down the hallway to go get their registration badges. Who was that?
Well, I will say it was probably my first 5 seconds in the convention center, and first 2 people I saw that I could pick out was Jimmy Houston and Roland Martin.
Yep.
And I was like, all right, I'm at ICAST. That was pretty cool. 2
fishing luminaries who've been doing it a long time. I remember them from when I was a kid watching them on TV. They're still thriving.
Still thriving. And Jimmy was full of energy. He had the mullet going, which we were laughing at. Really cool. And
he's really leaned into his look these days.
Yes, he has. He's a cool dude, and it was cool to talk to Roland too, because his son Scott is a heck of a pro bass fisherman. He's pursuing a classic right now, and his granddaughter Hillary Martin is going to be one of the big female anglers in the industry very soon. She's going to fish at the University of Alabama, so it's cool to kind of talk to him about that. And
yes, that was within the first 5 minutes. You're talking to Roland Martin.
5 minutes, yeah.
And then we got registered and went outside to the On the Water event, so out into the heat. And we had about an hour before the thunderstorms rolled in, but spent some time outside and check out some new gear. The first thing that we checked out, and this was a big launch scheduled for ICAST, was from Old Town Kayaks. And Old Town was making the first major public announcement of their new kayak, the EPDL Plus kayak, which is, we've talked about it, and I just did a review video on it, and it is a kayak that is based on, if you've ever been on an e-bike, so it's an electronic assist kayak. It's got a lithium battery included, built on that, right now on that big water platform, the same kayak that I fish from as a pedal kayak, but it also gives you that electric assist. So that was really cool to see them announce that, did this kind of a social media announcement that went out live on YouTube, live on Instagram. So we got to kind of watch the behind the scenes on that. And then for anyone who hadn't been on one yet and wanted to try it out, could go out and try it in the pond right there. Jimmy, you got out there right away on one.
I did. I jumped in, so I had the second chance to paddle. Somebody before me had gone and kind of parallel parked the kayak in, so in front of a bunch of people who everybody's got a cell phone out or their cameras, and I did like a 30-point turn trying to. They'd really like wedged it into the shore. It was kind of a. It was a tough.
Yeah, somebody could have helped and kind of given you a hand and pushed you out there, but it was really fun watching you struggle a bit. But yeah, that was cool to get out there and try that kayak and see the way that those could zip around the little retention pond there at the convention center.
Yeah, and then they had, we moved over then to like the St. Croix rods, and they were right next to Shimano and G. Loomis, which had, so kind of a whole bank of rods that you could go, they were already rigged up, take them down to the pond and cast it out there. The Florida Wildlife Commission, FWC, is that right?
I believe so.
Okay, so FWC actually stocks that pond ahead of that with largemouth bass, so you do have a chance to catch a good fish in there. I think last year, Some kid during the iCast on the Water event caught like a 7-pound largemouth bass, but I didn't catch it. I didn't see any caught, but just checking out the new rods and reels was pretty cool. The one I really liked was the G Loomis NRX Plus, and that's an inshore rod, and it has a really high price tag. So it's about a $700 rod, but it is, if albies and light tackle stripers are your passion, like that feels like the best of the best. So that is really high-end components, really fast recovery, great casting, super lightweight in the hand. That was, like the Rolls Royce of inshore rods. And then had a chance to check out some of the new additions St. Croix is making to their lines, especially with
Mojo Bass.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Well, that's an exciting one for freshwater followers because that's a new take on an absolute classic rod. I've been holding on to all my old Mojo Bass rods, worried about fishing those and breaking them. So it's kind of nice to know that they're coming out with new ones. And I was kind of having a lot of fun down there casting those around. A little too much fun, kind of hoping for a bite down at the pond there. That was very cool.
Yeah, definitely made a couple extra casts than you needed to just to get the feel for
I'll
the
say
rod.
I thought Jimmy was going to catch one on the big metal lip striper plug.
That's right. They had the so they took some of their kind of layouts from the Legend, or I'm sorry, the Mojo Inshore, which I have a great fondness for that rod. I caught my biggest ever striped bass on a Mojo Inshore this year, and they took that to the Mojo Avid, which is a little bit faster action to it. And we were messing around throwing big striper metal lips in that little pond, but I thought maybe if there was a giant bass, it would have come up, largemouth bass would have come up and eaten it.
Striped bass.
Yeah,
striped
exactly.
Bass.
So we also used, so the other thing St. Croix put out was this Trigon, which is a new take on their grip. So you have kind of it's a more ergonomic reel handle that they introduced in putting on a lot of their rods, in particular the Mojo Bass.
Yeah, that was cool. And a big part of iCast is you're actually talking with a lot of the engineers and the people who develop fishing rods and sort of the behind-the-scenes people who think this stuff up, and to see how passionate they are and excited, and have someone explain to you, fishing rod handles have always been circular because that just made sense. You wrap a cork around a circular rod or whatever the handle is. And they looked at it and they said, well, when you're actually holding a rod, the shape you're making with your hand isn't a perfect circle. It's more of this, some kind of a polygon, triangular shape, whatever. So they matched up the rod handle to actually fit the human hand perfectly. And, you hold the rod in your hand, you're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. This feels good. And I'm sure it's something that now when you go forward, you're going to see that more and more in different rods as well. Another rod we checked out down there was from Fenwick. Fenwick had a new lineup of rods down there, the Fenwick World Class rods. They were announcing a bunch of those at iCast, and also another good example, they brought in a pretty well-known rod builder who's been around for a long time, Justin Poe, and gave him the freedom and said, hey, we want to bring back the Fenwick rod name, which is a great classic rod. When I was a kid, I remember my dad, he only fished Fenwick rods because they made a great muskie and pike rod. And so they're bringing Fenwick back, and they're trying to get that swagger back. They brought on Justin Poe, this rod maker, gave him total freedom. And the latest line he came up with are these Fenwick world-class rods. Kind of high-end. They do inshore, they do freshwater. They even have some travel rods that I'm gonna try out as well. And they're in that $400 range. So an expensive rod, but kind of a really cool, sort of the actions and what you're, bringing a new kind of high-end aspect to Fenwick rods. So we played around with those a little bit as well.
I'll say those are some really exciting rods. Fenwick is kind of keeping that Fenwick classic feel to it. They've always been known, and I've always liked Fenwick for their cork and holding those world-class rods. It still has that classic cork feel, but you can feel that those blanks are really well made and they're very lightweight, super sensitive. Those are going to be very impressive. They already are.
And they had a name for it. I don't remember what it was, but they have a philosophy of, in all their Fenwick rods, from the lower price tiers to even the higher price tiers, that the feel of the rod in terms of the action stays the same as you go up. So if you really like a specific, as this 6.5 foot medium spinning rod in Fenwick, you really enjoy the action of that rod, you can move up to a higher level with better components and maybe a lighter rod and a better feel, more sensitivity, things like that, but you're still going to have the same action in the rod that you liked in the lower tier one. Thought that was cool. Something I'd never really thought about, but makes sense when you're trying to get a customer that really connects with your brand.
Because a lot of times it seems like when you go higher up in kind of that price range, the rods tend to get faster. They get lighter weight, they get faster, and the action does change as you move up for some rod manufacturers. So it's nice to maintain that, whatever the action is that you liked in that rod, to have that, like you said, in higher quality components.
Another thing, while we were testing out the rods, St. Croix launched reels for the first time ever. So St. Croix rod, we all know them as that. They've launched a reel brand, which from the outside you might not even perceive is by St. Croix, but the name of it is Seven Reels. It's spelled not S-E-V-E-N, but sort of with the Roman numeral, V-I-I in there. Have you noticed that?
I did, yeah. I picked up on that.
So we got to play around with those a little bit. We'll test those out and see what we think about that. But that's exciting to have yet another reel option for fishermen.
And after that iCast on the Wood, or after we have a chance to kind of get our hands on some of the gear and test it out at that retaining pond, you go in, and that evening there is the new product showcase, and that is one of the for fishing media for us. That's one of the biggest events of iCast. Is you go and we get to look at all the new gear before anybody else, and then you actually vote on what your favorite is for each category. So they break down all the gear to freshwater soft lure, freshwater hard lure. I think there's 23 categories in total, all the way down to like kids tackle and boating electronics. So we go there at 5 o'clock or 5:30 on that Tuesday night before the iCast, and we probably spend 90 minutes to 2 hours in there looking at all the stuff and seeing what we like. And I always have an eye out for what's applicable to the Northeast. So what's going to be my striper surf fishing stuff? What's going to be my bluefin tuna or even largemouth bass stuff? Our running joke there is always like, oh, well, that'll catch a sea bass, because pretty much anything will catch a sea bass. But we look for the stuff that's actually, even if it's not geared for the Northeast, stuff that could really work for us up there. Now, I'm going to throw it to Robbie. What did you, in the new product showcase, what did you see there that kind of caught your eye?
Well, I'll throw it into the freshwater side of things. I was very impressed with Rapala. They're putting out a new soft plastic line called Crush City. Very excited about this because Rapala is a classic brand. I love all their stuff, and a lot of people follow them and have been following them for a long time. But they paired with Jacob Wheeler, who's one of my favorite pros on the circuit right now, and he's a very popular, fun guy. But he is unbelievable right now and on top of his game, and he paired with Rapala to create this line of soft plastics that he calls, he says, in quotes, all I need to win a tournament. So I think it's 6 or 7 total baits. I could be wrong there, but it's around that, and very impressive. Kevin and I were watching some of the videos of the Bronco Bug with the floating claws, and very innovative from Rapala, and it's going to be all different colors, a lot of fun to fish those baits, and very, very applicable to the Northeast. They got everything from small swim baits all the way up to large style craws, so I'm very excited about those.
Yeah, and again, the funny thing about iCast, to try and paint a picture of what this is like there, we went to a press conference.
Correct.
Where they're announcing Crush City, the Rapala lures. And I'm like, thinking back when I was a kid and like a Rapala came in a box and you read the story of Lori Rapala and it was the minnow lure and such a cool brand. And I'm like, how did I get to this position where here I am now at iCast and you're in a conference room in a convention center, everybody's seated and you look around and it's people from all kinds of fishing media and fishing retailers and we're watching someone up at a podium, higher ups at Rapala talking passionately about how they've designed this new bait, and they've got these videos playing, and they show a crawfish underwater and show the Bronco Bug next to it, and then like you said, Jacob Wheeler gets up and emotional talking about how Rapala gave him the freedom to design the baits he needed to win a tournament, and I don't know, it's kind of a bit surreal. All of a sudden, you stop and look around and we're like, wow, look at this! Like we're all talking about fishing lures right now.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It's a room full of people who just love the sport so much.
Yeah, and they had a whole table lined up with all sample bags of the plastics. I definitely grabbed a few of those, and I've been fishing with them already. Really,
you
cool.
reminded me of that scene in what was it? Was the movie Bridesmaids when they give away puppies? and she grabs like armloads of golden retrievers on the way out of the bridal shower. Anybody else? No?
That was definitely me with Bronco Bugs.
Yeah, I may have grabbed a few too many.
Not to mention, I got to shake Jacob Wheeler's hand, so that was really cool. Been watching him on TV for a very, very long time, and he's on top of the YouTube game as well. So it's really cool to kind of meet him and his little friend group there as well.
And they had a display out to show you how these baits got designed. And you're looking at the final product is this little soft plastic bait, and it's got some cool attachments to it and different things. And then you see how they designed it in these big 3D printed models, and how they're adding antennas and tentacles and legs and different things, and deciding what's this bug going to look like when we're all done. Anyway.
So I wasn't at that. I was at a different press conference, and what you guys were doing with the soft plastics, I was doing with the bite-sized crab cakes.
Nice.
The caterers. So
Those were good.
they were delicious.
They had them at the Old Town one too.
They did. Yeah, I hit them at two different press conferences. Kevin, what was your favorite thing from the new product showcase?
My favorite thing to do at the new product showcase is to look at the line of lures. So they line up all of the saltwater and freshwater, hard baits, soft baits, and different baits in, these lit up glass cases. It's sort of like you're at a museum almost, and you're going down the line, but instead of, Roman artifacts, you're looking at all the new lures, and each one has a little card next to it describing what that lure is, why it was designed. And they're all trying to get you to, vote for it. Because that's a big part of this new product showcase, is that all the fishing media gets to go and vote and say, I think this was the most innovative in each of these categories. And then at the end, they announce winners, which we'll get to in a moment. But that, to me, is just my favorite. It's just going down and looking at the lures. A lot of them, you're like, okay, I've seen this before. This isn't really innovative. Some of it you look at and you're like, blows your mind. Who thought of this and why? But then a lot of them, it's like, oh, this is cool. Like this could really apply to our fishery. I remember looking again at Rapala's saltwater bait, the X-Rap. That's become so big on trolling for stripers. And to see that they took the X-Rap trolling, I think they call it the Magnum.
It's the Magnum Extreme.
Magnum Extreme. But they added keels to the tail, and it can now, I think, dive deeper and troll faster.
So yeah, you control that. So that's the Rapala X-Rap Magnum Extreme, I think, or maybe Magnum X. It trolls to 8 feet deep, but it can handle speeds of up to 15 knots, which is, if you're looking for, I said walleye. It'd be crazy. If you're looking for wahoo.
Tear the lips right off a walleye at 15 knots. But
if you're looking for wahoo and you want to bump that trolling speed way up, you've got a deep diving plug that's going to get and hold it 8 feet, and it's not going to roll over. Those keels are going to keep it tracking perfectly. And that's something where, even on a lot of head boats, if you're going to on a canyon party boat trip, what guys will do is they're looking for lures they can send out when you're moving spot to spot, and maybe pick up a couple bonus fish.
Another thing that I saw in the new product showcase that caught my eye, that I will have to look up. I don't even know the name of it or who makes it, but it was for kids, and it was paint your own lure, and it was a set of like real fishing lure blanks that came with paints. And it was aimed towards kids, and I was just like, oh man, like this is the toy I wanted as a kid more than anything.
That was the Northern Lights Toy Company. So I did. I looked into it afterwards.
Well, you've got kids. I'm sure you're going to supply them.
I also have a passion for art.
Yes. I can't wait to see you with little Jimmy smacking the paintbrush out of his hand and say, those aren't how mackerel look.
Yeah, so that was a cool thing. Onto the lure side, where you're saying, for years at ICAST, there was kind of this like arms race to see who could make the most ridiculous creature into a lure. Mm-hmm. So I think there was a company from Australia that made like a parakeet lure for largemouth bass, and that was when everyone kind of backed off.
It just started escalating. It was like it
started with ducklings.
There were ducklings, snakes. There was the iguana. Remember the iguana was big.
The bat,
yeah.
So they were just trying to make these most ridiculous largemouth bass lures look like whatever creatures, and ended with the parrot. But I did see somebody had a soft plastic baby alligator at this year's one.
I did not see that, but that is cool.
Yeah, when the basket on the baby gators, I guess, in Florida.
It's a big bite down there. Surface feeds on baby alligators.
Somebody will buy it.
Yeah. Heard they're making alligator flies too, fly fishing.
I'm sure they are, man.
So, Robbie, what did you see in the new product showcase that caught your eye?
Beyond the Rapala, yep.
Yeah, beyond the Rapala, there's a small company. This is more of a niche thing, but Eco Baits is what they're called, and they came up with this sonar reflective jig head, which is catered to the popularity of live sonar now in the freshwater fishing game. basically what it does is it allows you to clearly see your jig head on your sonar charts from up to 100 feet away, which is pretty cool because when you're fishing deep water looking for smallmouth or largemouth, you're going to be able to decipher your jig head from the schools of bait or the fish or whatever else might be down there. And that's going to be key to really dialing in deep water bites or even the shallow water stuff when there's fish chasing around bait fish in shallow water. That's going to be really, really cool to fish with for those of you that fish with all the technology in freshwater. So they're the first company I've heard of that's been doing that, and it's cool that they're a small company putting a lot into that. But that was definitely one of the more innovative things that I saw there from the freshwater side of things, for sure. Pretty cool.
Jimmy, any other striper lures that jumped out at you?
Yeah, so what I guess if I could narrow it down to 3 more, and these were all kind of in a similar genre where you had durable soft plastic material, but in more striped bass focused shapes. Leading off was the Z-Man Mulletron, which is an unbelievable name for a lure as it is, but that is basically a mullet shaped bait, and it has I don't remember what they're calling the tail, but if you've ever seen a Huddleston swim bait, it has that. It's not quite a boot foot tail, but it's kind of flared out, and it has a much more deliberate kick on a retrieve, on a slow retrieve, and it looks more lifelike. So this mullet bait has that, and it's made of Z-Man's Elastec, which is a very durable plastic. It resists getting cut by bluefish or toothy fish. It stretches, it holds its shape. It's incredibly durable, and so when you have a bait like that, you can catch a ton of fish on it before it's ever time to replace it.
And that was also a line-through bait, which I find interesting. I'm used to always tying on to the eye of a bait at the front. You know, you got the little metal circle of the eye of the bait. But this, you're actually threading the line in and tying onto the hook, right? That's
right, yeah. So that's something that's been kind of popular in largemouth bass fishing for a while, but it's starting to move toward saltwater fishing. The idea is when a fish comes up, say a snook or a tarpon, comes up and shakes its head, the lure, instead of that lure just swinging there and wrenching the hook out of the fish's lip, the lure slides up the line and it does not get as much leverage out of the hook, so or out of the bait, the weight of the bait. So that's pretty interesting. Looking forward to trying those up here as the mullet run gets going, Long Island, New Jersey, and even a little bit in Rhode Island.
I will say too, on the freshwater. The saltwater lures. Me and Cheech were eyeing down this little tiny, I think it was a little crab soft plastic, but it was the size of like your pinky fingernail. Me and Cheech are looking at it. This is good. Cheech grabs it, with his big Italian hands and drops it on the ground. And we must have been looking for it for like a couple minutes there. We're both like, oh man, we might cost this company a chance at winning this thing.
I probably would have voted for that if I'd seen it.
Oh my gosh, it was so funny. We're sitting there like, hopefully nobody saw that.
Hopefully they don't advertise.
We found it, put it back. Might have been some carpet on it, but kind of funny.
Wow.
It always gets very confessional in the podcast.
You can't see a camera there. You just want to admit your deepest, darkest secrets. The other things I saw, Game On, which is a Connecticut-based company, they had their Duratec line, another durable soft plastic. They put out a long, skinny, eel-like soft plastic. Like the look of that. And then Hyperlastics, which is part of a band of anglers, has a swim shad type bait, also made out of their, I forget the name of their material, but they're more durable soft plastic material with the hook, the inverse curve hook that they put on all their soft baits.
Yeah, that was a good looking striper lure as well.
And then beyond that, for striper lures, in terms of hard baits, Savage Gear put out it caught my eye because it had a mackerel pattern on there. I know it comes in a lot of different colors, but kind of a bottle type plug, a little neck popper type plug that's going to cast really well. Looks like it's going to be good for stripers and maybe possibly even tuna as well, depending on the colors. So that was, in terms of lures, I'd say that was it I saw for striped bass. It was it was kind of a lean year when it came to the striper lures, I thought.
I would agree with that, yeah. How about fishing reels, Jimmy? Anything you see in the world of fishing reels this year?
Yeah, so Shimano updated the Stratic, which I remember the Stratic was my very first nice saltwater fishing reel. I remember at the time I paid like $65 for it, and I was upgrading from a Tikka Libra. Do you remember the Tikkas?
I do remember the Tikkas, yeah.
They were a great price point, great introductory reel, and I caught a lot of weak fish on my Tikka, and I think it lasted a season and a half, and I was getting more serious about fishing, so I upgraded that Shimano Stratic. And back then, they were all white. They had a wooden handle, and it's just kind of
a classic reel.
It is. I still have it. But they've updated the new Stratic, and one thing that Shimano is always very good about doing is they take their technologies from their high-end reels, the Stellas, and as they update models of their more price point reels, that technology trickles down. So you do get Stella type technology and quality in a $200 reel as they continue to improve the Stella and then their entire line. So that's nice. The new Stratic looks great. Other reels, Shimano put out new versions of the Talica, which is going to be a great jigging reel, great trolling reel, good live bait reel, especially if we see those, a good chunking reel. We see all those yellowfin come in this fall like they had last year in Hudson Canyon, where it was just boat limits of yellowfin on butterfish chunks. Those reels look like they're going to be spectacular for that. So another classic reel that was updated for this year's iCast was the Penn Spinfisher. So we had the Penn Spinfisher 6. They've updated it, upgraded, and now you have the Penn Spinfisher 7 that's out there. That reel looks great.
And we have a feature on our website also, because we're not going to be able to touch on everything we saw there. So definitely check out onthewater.com, and you can see more of the stuff that we saw down there and get some more of the details that we can't remember off the top of our heads right here.
I'm impressed we're doing better than I thought we would in terms of some of the details. So
your retention for this impresses me.
It's working at the tackle shop. Is having to know and remember all this stuff on the spot. And I've been making some up too.
Well, it's a big part of working in a tackle shop is the ability to improvise.
It's a central part.
And you also, you and I went to the Shimano booth to play with some of their new rods, and I pretty much had to drag you away from their tuna rods.
Yes, so that was the thing I was most excited about at iCast this year was their new O'Shea Jigger big game popping rods. And they put, on the two heavier models, so when I say big game, they've kind of expanded, walked up their line of popping rods to include some designed for much larger fish. So they have an extra heavy, an extra heavy, and an extra heavy. And Max Despoto, who works with Shimano, but is a Northeast guy, he does a lot of tuna fishing out of Rhode Island, kind of explained to me like what you would want each one for. And he said that the extra heavy, which says big game on the blank, because he said it's also would be a popular rod for GTs and other fish abroad, but would be good for those like 65-inch and under bluefin tuna. He said those, if you're throwing stick baits at them. He said if you're going out to the Regal Sword or somewhere where you have some much bigger tuna out there, he said maybe the extra heavy rod would do it. That's a little bit shorter. I think that goes down to 7.6. I think it drops down to 7.6, so it's a little bit shorter than the extra heavy, which might be 7.9. And that one's heavier. That one, feeling that's gonna. You got to be ready for that. That you're gonna feel that one afterwards. The extra heavy is going to be a little bit softer, going to absorb more of the fight. That feels like it's going to be a great all around popping rod. The extra heavy, if you want to go and you want to catch a big one on top water, that's a great choice. The extra heavy, I think my arms would rip out of the socket if I tried to fight a big fish on that. But that's what that's for. He said that's an Outer Banks rod where they do get opportunities to catch 90, 100-inch bluefin on poppers and stick baits. And we get those opportunities here too. So he said that's a rod he has on the boat. It's not the one he starts with, but if he sees that class of fish, that's the one he's going to throw at it. But that extra heavy was one of the nicest popping rods I've ever felt.
The two of you talking tuna and how you're going to use these rods, you guys were just building into a froth there. Excitement. I could tell you both wanted to get out of Orlando and get back to the Northeast.
Because at the same time, like your Instagram feed is just full of people popping bluefin tuna, and we got out there and got some fishing done since we got back. Robbie and I had a great day jigging, and I know the topwater fishing is going to come back around by September, and I can't wait for that.
Jimmy Jig and Pop.
That's what I'd like to be. I'd like to rebrand.
Yeah.
And one other kind of side project that you launched at iCast this year.
So this was the most talked about event on the iCast floor.
Yes, it was.
Jimmy Coconut's Hawaiian shirt reviews. If you're on Threads, if you're the other person on Threads, please head over and check out my account where I reviewed multiple fishing Hawaiian shirts, and my rating scale was 1 coconut emoji to 5 coconut emojis, and we're still looking for that 5 coconut emoji shirt. I don't know if it's out there.
I don't know.
We saw some ones. They saw 1 0. Somebody put bananas on a shirt, and I gave that a rating of 0 coconuts, my lowest ever.
You've got to be a certain kind of person to say, I'm going to go fishing and I'm going to wear a shirt covered in bananas. My fishing shirt is just going to be straight bananas.
That would be bananas.
That would be straight bananas. Yeah.
We went rogue at one point. I think it was the last day. We had like 2 hours of just no meetings, and me and Jimmy went rogue and just went on an absolute rampage of finding fishing Hawaiian shirts.
I know. The people at Salt Life really... They had a whole bunch of them. There was a treasure trove of Hawaiian shirts there, and they said, where will these be appearing? I'm like, on Threads.
Well, this was back in early July when Threads seemed like it was ready to take off and be a real thing.
They just launched it, and I remember like it was a big deal. Everybody's talking about, are you on Threads? I'm like, oh my God, am I going to have to do another social media thing? And we can bleep that, right?
Yeah, we can bleep that.
All right. But anyhow, thank God it didn't take off. Or maybe it did, but I wouldn't know now because I'm no longer on Threads. There's just 6 or 7 Hawaiian shirt reviews out there floating up. Maybe I'll put them on onthewater.com. I thought that was some of the best objective journalism I've ever done in my 15 years here. So
that was a lot of fun.
And so speaking of the Jimmy Coconuts persona, the final night at ICAST, the way things wrapped up was at a party for Costa Sunglasses. This was their 40th anniversary, and so they threw a party for that. They launched a pair of glasses called the King Tide.
Yep.
Which is their most technologically advanced sunglasses. Reminded me a little bit of when Homer Simpson designs his own car and he puts a lot of cup holders and stuff on. It was like
and I need a horn here, 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 and here.
Exactly. And they made, but it is, they explained everything that goes into these sunglasses, even to the point of where, which there was like a grippy material on the bottom so that if you take your sunglasses off and put them on the dashboard of your car and then take a turn, they're going to stay in place versus slide off. It was like they put every thought they had into these sunglasses.
Pretty cool.
Not surprisingly, they won the award for best sunglasses. And then on the final night, they had a big party for their 40th anniversary and for winning the prize for their King Tide sunglasses. It was one of the coolest parties I've ever been to at ICAST for sure. Great venue. They had screen printing. They were screen printing 40th anniversary Costa shirts just live on site there and handing them out. They had I can't remember the name of the company right now that does the metal art, does bracelets, and we'll have to come back to that.
Sightline Provisions?
Yes.
Sightline?
Correct.
There you go. Good job, Jimmy.
Well. Good job, Jimmy.
They were on site as well doing Costa 40th anniversary, I guess you'd call them little metal art, and attaching it to special edition Costa hats and handing those out. They had an artist there painting mahi on a background of Costa logos. Painting that live was really cool. Just watching this artist work.
You walked in and you got a raffle ticket for a chance to win those type of things, and I put mine into the mahi thing. I didn't win, but yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Oh, I put mine in for I think a bottle of Papa's Pilar.
But I think it was Frigate Reserve.
Frigate Reserve. Yes.
I'd like to thank our sponsor, Cobia Boats, bringing you this episode of the On the Water podcast. From tournament fishing to cruising with family and friends, Cobia Boats will hook you with fishing features done right and comfort that doesn't quit. Check out their full line of center consoles and dual consoles at CobiaBoats.com and give them a follow on social at Cobia Boats. Choose Cobia and have it all.
So the party was going on, and tell you what, after a long week on the convention show floor, people tend to let loose a little bit, and it was definitely happening at that party. At one point, I think Kevin saw where things were going, and
This is where the veteran, the experience comes into play.
Yeah, I've been to as many as you, and I still make mistakes. So this is where the Ivy League education comes in. So Kevin sees where it's going, and he turns to me and goes, I'm going to go to the bar and get a couple drinks. You need another one? I was like, of course I do. And 20 or 30 minutes passes. I get a text, and Kevin's like, I'm back at the place. So Kevin knew he was leaving, but still didn't want to deal with people like, no, stay for one more. So it was a classic Irish goodbye. I feel like, did I teach you that move?
It's a great move because you end up leaving on a positive note. The last thing people remember is you offering to buy a round of drinks. And then they just assume like, oh, he must have gotten sidetracked or something happened. But man, he was a good time. He wanted to buy a round of drinks and then he just disappeared.
There you go.
I'm a little worried what people's last memory of me that night was, but that's okay. I think it wasn't as bad as some other iCasts.
Rookie Robbie was roped in for the ride. So
Yes.
it was no goodbye.
Thank you for making sure that Jimmy Coconuts got home all right.
Yep.
Shout out to Michelle from Pure Fishing for taking away your wallet at one point during the night so you couldn't buy another round.
Make it sound like it was a real problem. It was not.
No,
I really have a defense for myself, but I'd like to move back to the iCast conversations.
The point is, great party. Shout out to Costa. You guys throw a great party. Good times.
Great group. Awesome.
Live.
Joe Gugino, you're a good guy.
Joe Gugino from the Northeast. He is the fishing ambassador for Costa. We also went to they kind of threw an event along with Captains for Clean Water, huge group down in Florida doing a lot of work on the clean water issues down there. That was really cool to see. You saw a lot of Captains for Clean Water throughout this event because it's in Florida and because that group is doing so much to raise awareness about water quality issues, about trying to restore water flow through the Everglades so that water's not being shuttled out to the coasts and killing off seagrass and causing problems out there. Big issue down in Florida for fisheries, and good to see them working on that. So,
and even though that isn't our home waters, that type of stuff is important because we face similar issues here in the Northeast, and you want, and this is part of what the ASA does, is you want anglers, recreational anglers, to be a united front. So we are all working together toward goals that benefit fishing.
Exactly.
Keep our fishing better, keep our fishing businesses strong. And so, even though the Everglades are a long way away from here in the Northeast, it's still important that you pay attention, you know what's going on there, and that you lend your support, even if it's just in terms of signing a petition or writing letters and doing all that stuff to show their support. And hopefully those Florida anglers, when we face stuff up here in the Northeast, will also do that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been following that organization for a very long time, and I can't say enough about what they do. It was good to go down there and meet Captain Benny Blanco and Chris Whitman. And one of my favorite moments of ICAST was being there for their Steward of the Year award ceremony. That was really cool. I've been following along with that, Flip Pallet winning it. And some people I definitely idolized growing up. It was cool to see Wesley win and be there for that moment. That was definitely special. And the good thing about them, too, is they've branded their movement. They've got great logos. They do a lot of apparel work. Their hats are very popular. So I definitely brought back a handful of those. I've been kind of giving those out to my friends, trying to spread their word a little bit up here in the Northeast. You could always use their help down the line and get our word out there. You look at things like Save Our Bay going on in Plymouth, everything there. I've seen a lot of hashtag Captains for Clean Water, hashtag Save Our Bay in the same post recently. So people are catching on. It's definitely really cool to see that, and can't thank captains enough for the work that they do. You're being noticed up here in the Northeast. So,
and along those lines, we fished just before ICAST. So actually, Robbie, you joined us. We'd already booked all of this and weren't able to join us for the very first day when we got down, but we planned a day of fishing ahead of ICAST. As long as we're going down to Florida, let's fish for a day. And so we booked on Monday with Captain Cody Rubner and Captain Mike Holliday, two captains out of Stewart who just happen to also both be very much involved with Captains for Clean Water. That's a big passion of theirs. But had an awesome day of fishing down there. Did some inshore fishing for, I think, Jimmy, you guys got some snook on the fly. Cheech and I went offshore with Cody and chased a whole bunch of fish offshore. Got everything from, I don't know, we caught some big jacks. I caught a big jack on a topwater, actually a dock, so kind of like striper fishing, throwing a dock, and got to fight a big jack. Such an awesome fish. Kind of finally getting the respect they deserve as a big game fish. And then just a quick fishing story. Then we went and dropped on a wreck and tried to see, Cheech really wanted to jig up an amberjack. He caught a smaller amberjack, brought it up to the surface next to the boat. And I was standing right next to him because I wanted to see him get this fish up and see what it was. And small amberjack came up, and a enormous barracuda came out of nowhere, appeared, ate the amberjack. And I thought for sure, like, okay, this is goodbye to Cody's jig. Like, he's got a monofilament leader. And I'd never seen a barracuda this big. grabs the fish, and somehow just by luck, the assist hooks, which are attached with kind of a thicker cord, just got in the corner of the mouth of the barracuda. The fish takes off, and he managed to stay buttoned, get this fish all the way to the net. And it was honestly, I mean, I didn't even know that you could get barracudas this big in Florida. It was within striking distance. I don't think it was exactly, but it was within striking distance of the state record when we looked up later.
It was easily the catch and release record.
Yeah, it was massive. And, it took all three of us to kind of wrestle it up at the side of the boat, got it in for a real quick photo and got it back in the water. And, down there, the water is so clear, and we got that fish back in on one side of the boat. We watched it, swim under the boat and come out the other side, and it's kind of just regaining and starting to just sort of kick away. And then suddenly you hear the sound of a dolphin nearby comes up, and we look over at the dolphin, and I actually thought this dolphin's going to come over and just check out what's going on. And this dolphin, I mean, it moved fast, and it just absolutely T-boned this barracuda, which was, I mean, it was all of, 5 feet long.
Easily,
I don't know how to judge the weight on these things, but I mean, it was over 50 pounds, 60 pounds.
I wasn't on the boat, but I saw the video, and it was ridiculous. It'd be like if you took one of those for somebody like my size to take like a party platter hoagie and just bite it midway and run off with it.
Yes.
That was what it looked like.
That video is on Cheech's Instagram. I got to edit the footage back at the hotel, and that was some of the most incredible GoPro footage I've ever seen.
It was wild.
Not to mention the audio behind it as well.
And so this dolphin T-bones that enormous barracuda and swims off with it, and we're like, oh my God, I cannot believe that dolphin is going to eat that whole thing. And then maybe it was about 5 minutes later when we're still sort of in disbelief and talking fishing, the dolphin comes back around and it's holding just the head and shoulders of the barracuda and swimming around with it like it's a trophy. It's a different world down there.
What was your comment about the coral statue of Cheech or something like that?
Oh yeah, that's what Cheech made the joke that down there, all these fish on this particular wreck had been just hounded by that barracuda forever, and they were down there celebrating him. They were sculpting a statue of Cheech for.
He's bottom. the savior of the wreck there. Definitely, he said there's the Little Mermaid down there. They're all singing songs about Cheech and forks and.
Let's not give him too big a head.
Oh, man.
One thing I wanted to ask you guys both was we talked about some of our favorite things we saw at ICAST. Every year there's some things that they're a little ridiculous.
Let's call it the silliest
Let's call it the silliest things. What was the silliest thing each of you saw at ICAST this year? Probably the silliest thing I saw, and I did a double take at this one, was a pure tungsten weight that was 6 pounds, used for deep drop fishing for swordfish. And the cost of it, that in itself is a pretty cool idea. Tungsten's a lot denser than lead. It's very popular in the freshwater scene. There's benefits to it, that you can use a smaller, slimmer profile, which is going to have less resistance in the water, and use the same amount of weight as if it was lead. The difference with this was it was a $600 sinker, which is a kind of an aspect of your tackle that you don't want. You don't think of spending $600 on a sinker. I know guys up here who are doing the deep drop sword fishing thing where they're just basically pouring concrete into old paint cans because they don't want to spend that much even on lead. So that'd be I don't know, that's a bridge too far for me, that much for a sinker.
If you're investing in the offshore boat, you're spending the money on the fuel, you got an electric reel, you're spending a lot of money to go catch swordfish. Why not step up the sinker game?
Oh, okay. All right. Are you guys getting paid by Big Tungsten? I mean, what's happening here? You pro staff for that company? What did I step into here?
Don't yuck somebody else's yum. It might not make sense to you, but there's probably sword fishermen out there who are just, they're having the same, there's a swordfish podcast in Florida right now where they're talking about the coolest thing they saw at ICAST was a $600 sinker.
Correct.
Okay. Well, you know what? Then we can just end my segment of silliest things we saw at ICAST because I think that was it.
Nothing's been sillier than Jimmy Coconuts, so.
That's true. Probably the silliest thing anybody saw at Coconuts was a grown man doing Hawaiian shirt reviews, going into booths being like,
being followed by a full digital
you
camera.
Said?
What?
You said probably the silliest thing anyone saw at Coconuts.
Well, that's what it's going to be called next year. My Hawaiian shirt reviews are going to be a big sponsor. I think they're going to take off. I'm waiting for On the Water to make one, make a Jimmy Coconuts line.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So, There's the beginning of it.
It's the first item in the Jimmy Coconuts line.
I knew we had to reference it eventually. We just never took it off the table. It was like a prop.
It's a great addition.
Okay, so let's just rattle off the kind of fishing celebrities we saw. Now, if you're like all of us loved fishing growing up, and I think like between the ages of maybe like 11 and I don't know, 18, 10 and 18 is like when you're watching all those fishing shows Saturday mornings, consuming as much content as you can. Some of us never grow out of it, and a lot of us do. But like I remember like my fishing heroes and my first iCast way back in 2009, like seeing Roland Martin, seeing Jose Wahebe, who was still alive back then, seeing Jimmy Houston and Bill Dance. Like that is one of the very cool things of iCast, just being there in the same convention center with these guys who like only existed on TV for you for forever, and being like, wow, like I am also here working. Like, how did I get here?
I'm a little nervous to ask Robbie this because I walked around with him and I think it was like maybe 24 times I heard him go, that guy's a legend. That guy's the man. This guy's awesome. Oh my God, she's incredible. Have you seen her YouTube? Have you seen this? So, I mean, but who are some of the top kind of fishing personalities that you saw at iCast that was cool to meet?
Well, there's definitely a long list there, and it's a little bit different too because, I mean, it's cool for me because I got to grow up in the TV show era. So, you know, Bill Dance and all those guys are super cool to meet, but it's also morphed into the YouTube era as well. So I got to meet, you know, some of the famous YouTubers that are super cool. I mentioned, you know, her name's Maggie Carcello. She's from Wisconsin. Her and her friend Samuel Moore, they do a little media operation over there. It was super cool to meet them and following them for a long time. And then running into Aaron Benz and Ryan Izquierdo, two big YouTubers down there as well, was super cool. And I even had, I met John Brolin too a couple years ago, and he called me while I was down there. He's like, hey, you know, I wish I could be there with you, but make sure you go say hi to this person. And, you know, it was kind of cool to do that and see some of those people down there. But that was really cool to kind of walk around and point out to you guys, you know, who's really cool now and stuff like that. But even
Hey, I'm hip to some of the kids.
yeah.
I need all the help.
Even the pro bass fishermen, they all have their big YouTube channels now. And one of my favorite groups I follow is Jacob Wheeler, Dustin Connell, and Mark Daniels Jr. They travel all together across the country. They make super funny behind the scenes vlogs and stuff like that. So it was cool to come across them all together at once and kind of crack some jokes with them. They laughed at some inside jokes that you'd only know if you continuously watch their stuff. So they thought that was really cool, and they loved the energy. So yeah, I definitely was probably throwing a whole book of people at you guys at many different times.
Did you have any like never meet your heroes moments, or was it all positive?
It was all positive. One of the I will say I was a little intimidated by Carter Andrews when I first saw him, because Chris introduced me to him at the COSA party, and he kind of just looked at me with a glance, you know, with a deep stare, and I'm like, oh, my soul's getting stared into right now. But then he ended up putting a hand on my shoulder. He's like,
oh, he warms up real quick. Oh,
so
yeah.
He's like, so you're good at video, huh? And Chris is like, don't look at him like that, Carter.
He poached one of our video guys back in the day. I mean, not really poached him, but Matt Rissell, who started off as an intern with us and really hadn't really done much video work at the time, was into photography and honed his skills. Incredibly talented kid. Not a kid anymore, but incredibly talented videographer. Ended up going on and work on Carter Andrews' show. And so that was the joke Carter was kind of making of like, hey, you know, Chris, I'm going to take some more of your video guys away from you.
So that was funny, but awesome to meet Carter. He was definitely one of the bigger saltwater personalities I got to watch growing up. So that was really cool.
Nice.
I was actually starstruck at iCast.
That's right. I forgot about this. This was on Wednesday night, the Wednesday night parties.
Wednesday night, Hook Apparel, the fishing apparel company, they had a party, which was very cool. We showed up a little late to there, but still got in and had some drinks. I may have had a couple drinks, and I saw Babe Winkleman, who, you know, in the Northeast, maybe not so well known, but a big freshwater fishing personality who was huge when I was a kid. And, you know, I may have gone up to him. I may have gushed a little bit. I told him the story of how when I was applying to go to, I think it was high school, it was a magnet school, you had to actually apply and write an essay. And one of the questions was like, you know, if you could have a meal with a celebrity, who would it be and why? And I wrote about having dinner with Babe Winkleman, that I would want to have dinner with him and question him about this. And I still remember this, like, you know, parents took me for this, and they picked me up afterwards, and like, how did it go? And I told them like, oh, I had to write an essay, and famous person you never. I said I wrote about Babe Winkleman. And I remember like my dad being like, oh man, like more you're going back to the local public school. There's no way you're getting in. Like you idiot. What you wrote about Babe Winkleman. But anyway, I told Babe the story, and he loved it. He thought it was funny, and he did. He inspired me. I'm actually heading off on a trip to go fish Canada. He wrote a book called Fish in Canada that I just wore out when I was a kid. Was obsessed with that kind of fishing that he still does, of flying fishing trips for pike and walleye. It was cool to be able to meet him and say a bunch of stuff to him. It went way better than the ICAST, where I thought I would had a few, after having a few drinks, I thought I'd walk up to Warren Sapp and make some jokes. That did not go well.
No, well, your joke was that you pretended that you only knew him from the music video.
Yeah, I walked up to Warren Sapp, and boy, I can't believe we're getting into this, but again, had a few drinks. Everybody's going up to Warren Sapp and like, oh man, you were a beast. You're the best football player. You're the best football player. And I'm like, oh, he was in, I don't know how many people would remember this, but he was in a Trina video, and he played kind of just
He was the boyfriend who was getting cheated on.
Right, and his and the whole video is Trina like destroying his stuff and all that. So I walked up to him and pretended like, hey, I'm a huge fan. You're awesome in that Trina video. And I thought I'm like, oh, he's going to laugh and throw an arm around me and be like, oh man, that was fun. Like, I don't know, we'd bond over a shared love for Trina's music. That didn't happen. He took it as an insult, which I didn't mean it as at all. I thought it was funny. And he started yelling at me, and he's got a few pounds on me.
I wasn't there, but somebody took a picture of the interaction, and it's one of my favorite pictures of all time.
Yeah.
Just Warren Sapp looking agitated, and you standing there like kind of holding your ground, but being like, whoa, what did I do?
What are those surreal moments where I'm just waiting for him to break character and be like, I'm just screwing with you, like, and but it never came. He just kept kind of yelling at me and being agitated, and I started, to the point where one of our coworkers walked over, and again, neither one of us, Warren Sapp could have picked us both up and folded us into paper airplanes, thrown us into the next bar. But yeah, shout out to Tank, our old coworker Tank, who had my back. He was going to stand up for me, even though we probably would have both died. But again, Warren Sapp, big fisherman, hell of a football player, still a big fan. Feel bad if he's listening. Sorry, I didn't mean to insult you. I thought I was just having some fun. But hey,
there you go.
Turned out to be a great story. The time that I thought Warren Sapp was going to kick my ass.
ICAST is magical.
Indeed.
I think that's a great place to stop. Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Like Kevin said, we're going to have an extensive list of the new gear we saw at ICAST. That's going to be online on thewater.com. We also have a preview coming out in our magazine in the September-October issue, which should be hitting in about in a couple weeks from now. But anyhow, thank you for watching. This is Jimmy Fee, Robbie Tartaglia, Kevin Blinkoff, and thank you for listening.